Daily news and analysis. We keep you informed and inspired.
This is World Today.
Hello and welcome to World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. Coming up, China pledges more balanced trade and further economic opening. China says U.S. enterprises are welcome to seize development opportunities in the country. The 10th CELAC summit adopts a declaration urging an end to Cuba blockade. A UN agency has warned that the global climate is more unbalanced than ever. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on our previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching World Today. First up, the China Development Forum has highlighted the country's role as a key engine of global development as the country begins its 15th five-year plan. Chinese Premier Li Qiang addressed the forum's opening, saying that China remains committed to serving as a cornerstone of certainty and a harbor of stability for the world.
The outline of the 15th five-year plan is not only a new blueprint for China's development, but also a new opportunity for the world's development. This opportunity precisely stems from the certainty contained in the 15th five-year plan. 5 years from now, China's total economic output is expected to reach 170 trillion yuan. The economic growth over these 5 years is projected to exceed 30 trillion yuan. This will create even greater space for deepening economic and trade cooperation between China and other countries.
The premier said China will strive to promote high-quality development and maintain steady economic growth while continuing to foster a sound business environment. He also called for efforts to uphold the spirits of openness and innovation, expand free trade, and actively promote innovation. This year's event gathered nearly 100 senior executive officers from multinational corporations including Apple, Mercedes-Benz, and Samsung. So for more on this, my colleague Zhao Yang spoke with Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation.
So, Dr. Zhou Mi, first of all, what's the key message sent by Premier Li Qiang when he addressed the opening of this year's China Development Forum?
Well, when we're looking at his opening address, I think that I got three very important messages. The first one is that when we're seeing the world is changing so quickly, we are having so many different kind of resources. But what is the most lack of or the scarce resources is the market. So China is going to share our market with our friends. I think that is really important for us to deal with the uncertainty. And the second is that the world is facing so many challenges. So we need to try to look forward. There may be also always be some competition, but the competition doesn't have to be bad things. If we can do it in a good ways, it will help for all of us to have a better outcome by improving the efficiency. And the third message is that about China's future, we have promoted the high quality development for the coming 5 years. That will be very important for the world to have a better ability to deal with the uncertainties. I think these three messages are really very important for the participants and also the world.
Right. And as you mentioned, Premier Li Qiang said China would import more high-quality goods and work with trading partners to promote balanced trade development and expand the global trade pie. And he said China is committed to being a cornerstone of certainty and harbor of stability for the world economy. So how do you explain this, especially under the current global scenario?
Well, we see that last year we are seeing the reciprocal tariff is really disturbing the world order. While this year, maybe the reciprocal tariff is not there, but there are some or many new potential tariffs from the United States, like the 301, 122, so many different kinds of tariffs. It's a very big impact to the world. If you're looking at another side, like EU, they also, use some kind of new requirement for so-called digital product identification or passport. That's really our new issues that will have so many new requirements for the suppliers of those products. So with these kind of so many new things, how can the suppliers or manufacturers know what they can go to? I think that China is providing such a big room for them to explore their development and operation. So China is always, showing our openness. We are not just trying to stay in the same position. Well, at the same time, we welcome the suggestions. I think that is the messages that China want to share with our friends in the world.
And Premier Li Qiang said protectionism is by no means a panacea for solving problems. He said opening up and technological progress were needed to drive the new market growth. So what concrete steps would be needed, do you think, to translate this into the real world change?
Well, I would say that first of all, everyone should understand that it's important for us to cooperate in this kind of new scenarios. We're not just trying to deal with the problem separately. We have to do some things together. So with a consensus, it's a first step. And second, we have to define the ways or the path, like the goals, like the pathways or kind of directions to make the enterprises know better about what they are going to. And the third one, I think that we do need some technology. The technology is not just, owned by certain enterprise or certain country. It should be shared in a market base. I think these are really very important or necessary steps for us to use the technology to support the development while not just affected by its the bad aspect or dark aspect of this technology.
And looking ahead to the 15th five-year plan, Dr. Zhou, China is pivot to new quality productive forces with greater emphasis on innovation, advanced manufacturing, and technological upgrading. So how will the 15th five-year plan redefine China's economic resilience? And can this shift towards innovation provide a sufficient buffer against the external de-risking pressure?
Well, it's a really good question. When we're talking about the future, everyone thinking, where should we go? I think that China's five-year plan system is really our important messages sent by Chinese government. So it's not just some kind of attitudes. It's a really very practical ways of doing that. So from the central levels to the provincial levels, China is really implement our targets in a very solid way. So if you're looking at the past, we're not just saying something; we are fulfilling something. So for China's modernization, it's not a very new concept. It's China's always did that in the past many decades. We want to have a better and a better development of the mode. But in the recent years, I think that we have put so many focus in this area. So I would say that this kind of high quality development is just trying to do several impacts. First of all, China will have a better place for the technology to accumulate here, to have a better integrations by different parts, and they can use the resources in a much wiser and much more efficient way. And second, I would say this kind of concept is not just from one certain sector, it's widespread, cross-sectional. So it will bring a collection of resolution to the world to deal with the uncertainty. And the third one, I think that China is not just using this technology by ourselves. We are spreading our abilities through our cooperation, like the trade and investment from other countries. So with this kind of activities, our abilities can be enjoyed with our friends. While at the same time, we're not just using all the resources or occupying all the sectors. When we are going to the high quality development, maybe there are more traditional sectors that will enjoy better space by our trading partners. So in this way, I would say the high quality development is not just a concept. It is really a very promising ways for us to dealing the relations with our friends. And I believe that is also good for us to develop in the different but beneficiary way for all of us.
And we are seeing participation of this year's China Development Forum from a lot of multinational companies like Apple, Samsung, and Siemens. So what do you think are these firms really looking for in China right now?
Well, I think that they are looking for some signals sent by the government because each year, after the China's two sessions, the Chinese premier also expressed our targets in the report, the government report. And after that, we have this forum. So these leaders, these enterprises come here, they want to hear what are the really, background of those reports and what are most of important messages after this report. So based on that kind of signals, they can make a better decision for this year's plan. Well, the second, I think that they come here because they really want to be integrated in the networks of China's development, like the ecosystems. They can enjoy our better communication with Chinese partners, and they can also have more, messages from the academia, the experts, and also some of the think tanks. So these kind of opportunities are, very precious for them to look at. Well, the third, I would say that this year they really seeing so many uncertainties. So with the turbo world, they want to find a better place. So China is definitely, very stable. So we are providing more opportunities. That's the reasons I think that most of them come here to seek for.
And looking at these numbers, Dr. Zhou Mi, we are seeing more than 8,600 new foreign-funded enterprises established in China in the first 2 months of this year. And this is up 14% year on year. So what does this number tell us?
Well, I mean, that number shows that foreign investors are having more confidence. They want to join this cooperation with Chinese market. So these cooperation are, based on the real activities. It's not just some messages. They are really doing that. So with this kind of cooperation, I would say that they will have a better development here in China, and at the same time, Chinese companies, along the supply chains and industries are also benefit from that. So we may have the better possibilities for dealing with the uncertainties, and we are able to deal with these, problems and trying to use the technology in a wiser way.
And China says it's continuing to foster a sound business environment. So in your opinion, for foreign investment in China, what are their main issue of concerns right now? And what can be done to address their concerns?
Well, yeah, we can find that from, also the messages from the premiers. China is not just trying to make the foreign investors come to China. We open our market. That is the first step. And second step, we want to make them be sure about operating here in China. So we are not just, remove the barriers at the door. We are also reduce the obstacles or some of the difficulties in China when the companies are going to locate resources, different factors. They can enjoy the national treatment like all the China's local companies. So these kind of practices will be copied from one area to other areas, and will also promote a better and more promising, more transparent development environment for those businesses who want to come here to China.
Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation, talking with my colleague Zhao Yang. You're listening to World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng has called on American businesses and companies to fully grasp the opportunities from China's development. He made a remark in a meeting with a delegation of the U.S.-China Business Council, encouraging them to continue to promote friendly exchanges and a healthy advancement of the bilateral ties. So for more, joining us now on the line is Professor Yao Shujie, Deputy Director of the Department of Social Sciences, Chongqing University. So thank you very much for joining us today, Professor Yao Shujie. China has officially adopted its 15th five-year plan for social economic development. So over the next 5 years, what opportunities can China offer to American companies?
China has entered a new stage of economic development, and the primary policy of China's openness remain unchanged. So that means the Chinese huge market is still widely open for any foreign direct investment. in particular to the United States multinational company, which have a lot of advantage that the Chinese market requires. So the opportunity for the major U.S. multinational company is ample for the next 5 years. This is a great opportunity for the fairly uncertainty world in the United States, which now with the global turbulence, China provided a fairly safety harbor for investment. And I think multinational company in the US, they will see this opportunity. Particularly, you can see the Apple chairman. He just recently joined the Chinese meeting conference about investment in China. He said, despite the very long periods of confliction between the Chinese and the United States in terms of trade and technological confliction, Apple remain a very strong base for China in terms of investment, and also China is one of the most important, actually the world's most important strongholder for Apple's subsidiary and also key component and technological design. This reflects that in the business cycle, the U.S. business people, particularly the big boss of the big company, they have a very positive view on the Chinese market.
So when the U.S. business community deepens their connection, their presence in China, in what ways do you think this can promote the healthy development of China-U.S. ties?
Yeah, the Chinese-U.S. tie on the surface, we just look at the superficial figures of international commodity trade and service trade, which despite a sharp declining as a share of China's global trade volume. But this following relationship, there's another dimension, which is the domestic investment in China by the U.S. multinational companies, who generated about 300 to 500 billion US dollars of net profit, which is much bigger than the trade surplus of China with the United States. On the one hand, China-U.S. have this merchandise trade surplus. On the other hand, the U.S. multinational company is making a lot of money from the domestic Chinese market. So in this way, I think the investment by the multinational company from the United States into China provide a very strong stability and sustainability of the Sino-U.S. foreign relationship in terms of business and technological exchange.
So over the next 5 years, a focal point of China's high quality development, we understand, is the pursuit of science and technology self-reliance. Does this represent an opportunity to American companies doing businesses in China, or would you say that's more of a challenge?
I would say it's both. In terms of opportunity, the U.S. companies still master a lot of technology, which the Chinese may take some time to catch up. And some of the technology, the U.S. is still leading far away in front of the Chinese pioneer company, such as the GPU, the chips. The U.S. is still far better than the Chinese counterparts. On the other hand, I think it's the U.S. President Donald Trump and also the government policy from the United States, which is highly protective in terms of getting a good relation with the Chinese company. This actually have a push and pull effect on the Chinese attraction to the U.S. investment. On the push effect, I think the Chinese manufacturing, the Chinese company, even the Chinese government, they have to pay a significant attention to some sorts of technological autonomy or technological dependency, or even choose some sorts of advanced technology, which will become a bargaining leverage for the Chinese when they negotiate with the U.S. counterparts. The push effect is that because China, U.S. still have a strong degree and extent a fairly wide extent of technological complementarity. So if the U.S. company are willing, and I believe that the multinational company, because of profit-driven, market-driven motivations, they would not be totally inconsistent with the present or future, government administration. They would look at the sale interest of getting into the Chinese market to generate revenue and profit. So this would be a fairly strong opportunity in a sense. They maintain their business autonomy, and the autonomy is basically to strengthen their global holding in terms of market, in terms of product, in terms of technological expansion. And China is the largest exporter in the world. China in the future will provide probably the largest consumers market. And this will become highly attractive for the U.S. company. They cannot, ignore this kind of opportunity, particularly in the 15th five-year plan. China have a very strong ambition to increase the economy scale by about 4.5 to 5% on an annual basis. This would provide a huge market opportunity for any foreign direct investment company, let alone those grasping the kind of technological advantage, such as the U.S. companies like Apple, like Microsoft, and so on.
So the ongoing Iran war has fanned renewed fears about inflation in the U.S. economy. Against that backdrop, how much does the Trump administration need a stabilized economic and trade relationship with China?
I think Donald Trump is a very strong figure. It's highly difficult to predict what he's going to do next. So this is the most difficult uncertainty element at the global level, including the war currently in Iran, which is trigger a very panic, not only in the stock markets, as we can see. The Japanese, the Korean stock market is almost collapsed, declining by 5 to 10%. And also the petrol prices is now increased by, measured in Chinese renminbi term, is over 2,000 renminbi per ton. And US dollar term is $300 per ton. So this is a very strong depression in the international economy. And we don't know how this depression is going to penetrate into the business confidence. But one thing is very clear. The Chinese market is very open. The Chinese economy is very steady. And it provides a very safe, a very safety investment haven for most multinational company. So I think it would be quite attractive for the Chinese company at this particular uncertainty, not only for President Trump himself, but also mostly I think is for the chairman and also the CEO of the big company in the United States.
Okay. So we know in December, China added 200 industries to a list that is eligible for foreign investment incentives, from tax breaks to preferential land use, with a focus on advanced manufacturing, modern services, and green and high-tech industries. So from China's perspective, is there a need or even urgency to stabilize foreign investment in China, including those from the U.S.?
Certainly, there's a need and necessity for this kind of policy. China is desperate to move the technological ladder to the medium and higher level. So the kind of preferential policy is highly focusing on this particular sector, the advanced manufacturing, the emerging sector, and also the future sectors. As long as the U.S. company have this kind of technological advantage, it will be mostly welcome, and the Chinese government at whatever level, they will be particularly attractive and very positive to this kind of investment.
Thank you very much for joining us. Professor Yang Shujie, Deputy Director with the Department of Social Sciences at Chongqing University. You're listening to World Today. I'm Ding Han in Beijing. We'll be back after a short break.
My name is Alessandro Golombieski Teixeira. I'm a professor of public policy and management at Tsinghua University in Beijing. I am a great listener of The World Today. In my opinion, The World Today is one of the best China radio programs. In The World Today, we can get the best news and analysis in what is happening now in the world. So please come to join us.
You're back with World Today. I'm Dingheng in Beijing. Iran has warned that power plants in countries hosting U.S. bases will be considered legitimate targets if the United States attacks Iran's power facilities. The statement from Tehran came in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to target Iranian power infrastructure if the country fails to fully open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. Iran's primary military command says if the U.S. threats are carried out, Iran will then close the Strait of Hormuz until damaged Iranian facilities are rebuilt. Tehran has warned that the energy infrastructure across the Gulf region could face quote-unquote irreversible damage or destruction if the United States targets Iran's power plants. So for more, joining us now on the line is Dr. Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies, Fudan University. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Iran says its military doctrine is shifting from defensive to offensive. But in your observation, what stage is this war entering?
Well, in fact, I think the war is entering a very critical moment. I think this shift signals that Iran is no longer content with just absorbing blows and launching limited reprisals. Actually, it is moving into sustained proactive disruption. If we look at what has happened over the past 4 weeks, we will find that at the very beginning, when the United States and Israel suddenly launched strikes against Iran and attacked the Supreme Leader Khamenei, Iran was shocked at that point. But right now, after 4 weeks, now this stage feels like a transition from initial shock and survival to a deliberate wall of attrition, where Tehran aims to raise the costs of the United States until its adversaries recalculate. So the context is that now Tehran believes it retains significant staying power and new capabilities. So right now it's very likely to take a more hardline position and continue the asymmetric tactic.
So in other words, in your opinion, we have already passed the point where we debate whether the United States and Israel can achieve a lightning or quick victory.
Right. I think right now it's very hard because, in fact, I think there are a lot of miscalculations from the side of the United States. For example, at the very beginning, Trump, he expected that he was going to copy the so-called model of Venezuela, and he expected that this was going to be a very short-term war, and he could, got a lot of achievements by simply attacking Khamenei, the supreme leader. But later on, he found out that, in fact, Iran demonstrated very strong resilience, actually till now, Iran has kept this position of anti-United States confrontation. So the United States has never expected that this is going to happen.
An Iranian official has outlined a set of conditions for ending the war, including guarantees that the war will not reoccur, closure of all American military bases in West Asia, full reparation by the United States and Israel to Iran, an end by the U.S. and Israel to all regional wars, implementation of a new legal system over the Strait of Hormuz, etc. What do these demands from Tehran tell us about Iran's current mindset?
Well, I think currently there are fundamental differences between Iran and the United States. So the United States hopes that Iran will surrender, but judging from the conditions Iran has put forward, as you just mentioned, it is not prepared at all to make a lot of compromises at this stage, because from Iran's perspective, on the one hand, its missiles, its regional allies, especially its influence of blocking the Strait of Hormuz, are so far sufficient to allow the country's regime to remain resilient. And at the same time, it could also give a lot of pressure to the United States. And on the other hand, Iran believes that its previous tactics have been effective, inflicting high costs and significant sunk costs on Trump. Therefore, Iran believes that Trump has a strong desire to withdraw from the United States, from the Middle East, and is therefore attempting to propose more, negotiating terms. So I think currently Iran and the United States are in a state of fighting while negotiating, but it seems that a ceasefire will likely remain a significant challenge.
Now, according to Turkey's Foreign Minister, Mr. Fikan Hadan, Gulf countries have warned that they may be forced to take action if the war involving Iran continues. So, how long do you think Gulf countries can stay out of the war?
Well, I think the Iranian strikes have already targeted many infrastructures and also the American military bases in the Gulf countries. And also another very big issue here is the Hormuz restrictions, because we know that the Gulf countries, they depend largely on the export of the oil and gas. And right now, due to this blockade of the Hormuz Strait, it's very hard for them to get enough revenues. And so the economic pain is real. So the Gulf states face difficulties in transporting the energy resources. And also, countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, they previously pursued the economic diversification policies, and they managed to attract significant international investment. But right now, they face the risk of declining overseas investor interest. So currently, the Gulf states, they don't wish to be deeply involved in the war because they view it as a war launched by the United States and Israel, and they don't want to share the cost. And furthermore, they fear that an escalation of tensions with Iran may be a disaster, because in the event of a sudden United States withdrawal, they may need to confront Iran alone. Therefore, they are still adopting a cautious strategy. But if the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked for, let's say, several weeks, then it means that the United States may exert greater pressure on them.
Thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies with Fudan University. Coming up, the 10th CELAC Summit adopts a declaration calling for an end to Cuba blockade. This is World Today. We'll be back.
Welcome. I am Chuchu Zhang, Deputy Director at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Fudan University. On the World Today program, we will dive beyond the headlines to uncover the stories, trends, and impacts that connect states across the globe. Join me on World Today.
You are back with World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. The community of Latin American and Caribbean states has adopted a declaration calling for an end to the economic, commercial, and financial blockade of Cuba. This came as the 10th CELAC Summit wrapped up in the city of Bogota, Colombia. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parilla said his country is facing serious challenges and is now engaged in a struggle for dignity and freedom. He also expressed Cuba's willingness to engage in serious and responsible dialogue with the United States on the basis of mutual respect. The declaration has also reaffirmed the validity of the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. So for more on this, my colleague Do Hongyu earlier spoke with Fernando Munoz, founder of Medias Without Means, a platform dedicated to combating misinformation.
This is not the first time that the international community expressed opposition against the U.S. blockade on Cuba. The UN and Latin American countries have done this for decades. Why has the U.S. continued to ignore this?
Well, the main reason is they continue to castigate the continent. They continue to castigate Central America and South America with their hegemony and their power. they are not going to allow other countries to trade freely with Cuba in a way to protect what they have accomplished since the 1963 missile situation. There's no way for the United States to treat Cuba in a humane way. They cannot afford to do it. This is why they continue to ignore every single vote by the international community to remove their embargo on Cuba. The question is, when will things change for the United States so that the voice of Latin America can actually be heard and Cuba can have an opportunity to join the international markets and the international world as a sovereign state? Because as things are right now, that is not taking place.
But the Cuban foreign minister has called for a dialogue with the U.S. on the basis of mutual respect. How realistic is that?
Well, all you have to do is look at every single negotiation that America has done over the last few years. Whenever there's a negotiation, they always do something at the same time that they're talking to people. We can see that took place in Iran. They're negotiating a peace accord, they're negotiating some kind of agreement, and there's an attack. So when you sit down and talk with the United States, you really need to be watching your back. So it is clear that Cuba would like to ameliorate the situation, but you always have to be wary of what is America planning behind your back while you're sitting down at the table. So discussing with sovereignty as the key point is essential, but always with America, watch your back.
And then, to what extent could the latest declaration by CELAC help ease the situation?
Well, CELAC is gaining more and more importance, relationship with China, relationship with Africa, relationship with Europe. So it's becoming a stronger voice around the world. And I think that when America sees its power challenged by the rest of the world, then the voice that CELAC is trying to bring forward is going to be louder and stronger. So it's jobs that need to continue. As you said at the offset of this interview, it's not the first time that international entities have called for an end to the embargo, and CELAC should continue to do so. The Bogota declaration is going to reinstate the need for this embargo to end. We need to continue speaking for Cuba and put an end to the situation that has been going on for so long. What we're seeing today is really a sign of times that are changing. When you see China helping with the energy crisis that has been imposed on the Cubans by the United States, is a sign of relief for the Cubans and for the global South. There is so much more that could be done to help Cuba if the Americans are not moving an inch from their position.
There's so much more to be done. And how might the ongoing U.S. midterm election change the country's policy towards Cuba?
I think this all depends on how Americans are going to interpret the world situation. Some people defend what Donald Trump has been doing around West Asia. Others are criticizing it. A lot of criticizing the situation with Latinos and Latin Americans in the United States, with ICE and all those actions. So the midterms is basically going to be an evaluation and assessment of how Americans see those policies. And if we are looking from the outside, we could see that it's not going to be very well. People are paying more for petrol at the gas stations. People are going to fight against organizations like ICE. It doesn't look very good for the Republican Party. However, we have to wait and see, because the distraction is the key for the Republican Party. All these situations that took place, for example, in Venezuela, in Iran, they're just distractions from what people refer to as the Epstein elites in the United States. They're going to be judged on what they are producing around the world, and what they are producing around the world is carnage. We hope that the mandate of the Democrats can be reinforced, and they can put some sort of controls on this presidency that is truly out of control.
Now, from Latin America's perspective, does the collective statement by the CELAC reflect new shifts in Latin American countries' policies toward the United States?
I think it reflects a louder call for respect of our sovereignty. When we have a situation like Venezuela, where they actually go into a sovereign country, they kill citizens in the country, and they kidnap a duly elected leader of the country, the entire region is going to jump and say, hey, where is our sovereignty? We really need to respect our sovereignty. And the thing is, because it turns out to be so easy for the United States to do these things, they're not going to stop. And this is what we see now in Cuba. This is probably what's going to take place with Greenland. When there is no challenge to these violations of international law, then it reinforces that behavior. I think we are seeing a waking of the leaders of Latin America looking at this bully at the North. It's going to get louder, and hopefully is going to get more effective, which is what we need. We need effectiveness. Being surprised and being shocked doesn't take us too far. There needs to be a lot more strength behind the words and behind the statements from CELAC and any other international entity.
And the CELAC declaration also reaffirms Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. What practical impact will this concept have on this region in terms of its sovereignty and its ability to resist external intervention?
Well, the main thing is the mandate from the United States is renaming of the Monroe Doctrine to the Dunroe Doctrine. And what CELAC is asking for is a rejection to this doctrine that is aiming at submitting our countries and our sovereignty to the will of the United States. Peaceful Caribbean is a Caribbean that's independent, is a Caribbean that has freedom of navigation, that has freedom to trade with whoever they want to, and that includes Cuba. The call is let the Caribbean be a place of peace and prosperity. Will that take place? We have yet to see. The United States likes to whip countries into compliance, and so far we've seen very few countries actually stand up and fight domination of the United States. Our president, Gustavo Petro, has done it in the past. President Lula in Brazil, Sheinbaum in Mexico. So we see a few countries around the region standing up to the United States and standing up for the sovereignty of their own countries. That's what we want. We want peace in the regions, and we want non-interference in our affairs.
Fernando Munoz, founder of Media Without Means, speaking with my colleague Do Hongyu. Coming up, a UN agency warns the global climate is more unbalanced than ever. This is World Today. Stay tuned. You're listening to World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. The World Meteorological Organization says the climate of the Earth is now more out of balance than at any point in recorded history. In a report released on Monday to mark the World Meteorological Day, the UN agency warns that the atmosphere and oceans are warming while ice continues to melt at an accelerating pace. The report shows that the past decade has been the hottest on record, with the year 2025 last year namely ranking among the hottest 3 years ever recorded. Last year, global temperatures were about 1.43 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level. So for more, joining us now on the line is Dr. Peter Newman, Professor of Sustainability at West Curtin University in Australia. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor.
Thank you.
So first of all, is it coincidence that us humanities has just endured, the hottest decade on record?
Oh, no, it's not a coincidence. Totally predicted. All of the modeling shows that it's going to get worse. And as the atmosphere heats up, you get more and more evaporation of the ocean going into the atmosphere. So there's a lot more rain going to be coming down. We can expect more and more big events, floods, and then at the same time, hotter weather. And some places will be very dry because of that hotness, and others will be very wet. So the extremes are now being measured, and every year, or it seems every month sometimes, we're breaking new records. This perhaps wasn't expected as quickly as this, but neither was the increase in temperature quite so rapid in the modelling. So we're very close to the 1.5 limit that we hope to keep under, and we're now getting past that, and it's going to keep going past it with the current conditions.
Yeah, the goal you mentioned was set during the 2015 Paris climate deal, I guess. So actually, this represents the first time that the Earth's energy imbalance has appeared as an indicator in this WMO report. We are talking about the gap between the solar energy entering the atmosphere of the Earth and the heat escaping back into space. So what's the significance of this indicator?
Well, it is something that the scientists would have seen at some time in the future. And I think just a bit devastated that it's come sooner than we had hoped. The reality is we are not getting rid of fossil fuels, burning of fossil fuels as quickly as we had hoped. The Paris Agreement was set on achieving the 2050 net zero fully, but it was expected to begin happening sooner and more rapidly so that we could stay under the 1.5. We're now passing through that, and it does look like the extremes are going to be released. So I don't think it's unexpected amongst those scientists. Perhaps the politicians who interpreted it are now being shown to be not quite so clever as they thought they were. But there are many countries that are proceeding very quickly and getting great benefit from the net zero agenda. So it shouldn't be something we fear. It should be something we embrace. And certainly China has been one of the great leaders in that. Australia's doing reasonably well, and certainly some of our cities, like mine in Perth, is very rapidly moving down this path, and it's very popular. More than half of the households now have solar, and increasingly over 20% now with batteries, and it's going up very rapidly, 40% growth a year. Electric vehicles are coming on stream very quickly, nearly all Chinese technologies, and that kind of process is well underway around the world, but it's just not happening quickly enough in some countries and some sectors, particularly the transport sector and the freight sector.
I take your point. Definitely an accelerating pace in terms of adopting those technology and capacity is required. And definitely from a humble perspective, China needs to do much more. So in terms of the excessive heat that fails to escape back into the space, the reports by the WMO says around 91% is absorbed by the oceans. So what could be the consequences for oceans?
Well, it certainly doesn't help a lot of the coastal areas as they warm up. In South Australia, we've had an event that was totally unpredicted with massive algal bloom that was killing all the fish and causing a lot of public health problems because there were real toxins in the algae, and they were blowing up and escaping from the ocean into the surrounding beachfronts. that was related to the fact that there'd been a flood that had brought a river down with a lot of nutrients, and at the same time, the warmer water had happened, and an overturning of a cold area had just come up with a whole lot of nutrients. So that was completely new as an experience. It was unexpected, and it's killed off the fishery along there, and a lot of problems. A lot of the tourism is gone, and these impacts are happening now because there is more heat going into the oceans. As you heat them, they evaporate. They cause more water to go up into the sky, and they cause all kinds of nutrient exchanges to occur and disturbances to the fish and the biodiversity within that system. And that's the kind of thing that we can expect more and more of. But mostly the water vapor that is producing more rainfall, and that's coming down in cyclonic activity. That's just hot air and more water. We're getting more and more cyclones, hurricanes, whatever you call them, and they're coming in increasing numbers. So we just are entering a phase of increased unpredictability of the weather, other than it being predictably unpredictable. We just know it's not going to be quite as simple as we always thought it was. And it's going to harm agriculture, it's going to harm all the economic activities that depend on having some kind of certainty in their lives. And certainly people are going to be very disturbed, and our cities will be very disturbed.
Yeah, indeed. So, when we talk about climate crisis, including the increased unpredictability that you mentioned, Professor, of course, they could lead to increased competition over dwindling resources, which would then pave the way for global instability and even wars. Very briefly, Professor, we still have about 1 minute or so before we need to finish. The other way around, do you think wars are a contributor to planet warming emissions?
Well, it's two sides to it. Firstly, blowing things up and in the atmosphere is certainly not helping, because there's an awful lot of CO2 released in every explosion. They all have an impact on climate, and there's a lot of energy in that released. I haven't seen the data on what the Gulf War is doing to the atmosphere, but it's certainly not going to help it. But the other thing is that they are destroying a lot of oil and gas facilities that will never be rebuilt. They cost too much. They can take 20 years to rebuild. By then, they will not be needed. So, and everywhere in the world is now looking to get electric vehicles and get solar and batteries into their homes and businesses. So it's accelerating the mitigation policy adoption.
Thank you very much. I definitely take your point. But thank you very much for joining us. Professor Peter Newman joining us from Curtin University in Australia. That's all the time for this edition of World Today. Bye for now.
Hello, I am Dr. Digby James Wren, a political analyst and international relations scholar specializing in China area studies. World Today offers unmatched in-depth perspectives on China's politics, economics, business, technology and society. World Today's team of reporters and contributors provides valuable information from all of the world's major economies. I hope you can join me on World Today for the very best insights and news from China, on China, and help to build a better understanding of China's role in the world today.